Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.
Management Institute in particular. So this is the agenda. We're going to do a quick round of intros, talk a little bit about project risk management, and then I will obviously open up the floor for any questions that you may have to follow up with the presentation itself. Just as an FYI, for those of you who happen to be in the Dubai area, I will be there the week of May 18th. I'll be there as a judge for the upcoming International Business Excellence Awards. So if any of you are in the area, I would love to meet up with you. You're welcome to drop me a line and we can talk about that offline if you'd like to meet up and discuss any of this in person. So a little bit about myself. For the last 4 or 5 years in particular, I've been doing a lot of work in the project risk management arena. And I was recruited back in 2009 by the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. You're seeing some pictures here on my screen from not so sunny Newfoundland. Beautiful part of the world where my team was assigned the task of bringing in lean principles and also to manage risks, and specifically around hurricanes, as we'll talk about, and how the IT infrastructure there would be able to handle hurricanes and some of the other natural disasters that that particular area is prone to. After that, I moved on to Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan, again, is an interesting area where the oil boom brought in a lot of revenue for the province. Some of the northern areas of Canada have gained from that. And again, I'll be talking to you a little bit about some of the risk management that we did in our projects there. And back in 2012, then I decided to come back to Southern California. And now what I do is I'm doing consulting for various places. This is, again, in your region, doing some work in France, in Doha, and in Vancouver, amongst other places with several clients. So we have several active projects running, and a lot of it, again, is dealing with troubled projects where, again, risk management tends to be quite prevalent as far as an active need. So if we look back in history, project management has been around forever. We obviously, give the project management institute a lot of credit, which it deserves. But the PMI was, formed in the late 1960s. We have been building, as a human race, pyramids and the Great Wall of China. And along with project management, we have had risk management go hand in hand. And we'll see how some of the new industry adoptions, such as Agile methodologies, have actually got older risk management principles that have been around for several centuries, perhaps. So Hurricane Igor, let's talk about this first. This was a Category 4 hurricane that hit the island of Newfoundland in Canada. I was there when this occurred. It was in September 2010. It caused considerable devastation. It was a Category 4, so on a scale of 5, Category 4 is pretty horrendous. I don't know if any of you have been through a hurricane. I would definitely not wish for any of you to go through this. My family was there with me. Here's some pictures from some of the events. So these are pictures after the fact. So this is the Trans-Canada Highway. It's the only highway that connects across Canada. And the damage for you is evident here. I don't have to explain this. These are pictures from the city I was living in, the capital of Newfoundland, St. John's. This is after the fact. Water was gushing all over. This is a calmer street, one of the major streets, one of the major thoroughfares where the flooding was not as bad. Again, downed power lines, which, as you can imagine, introduced all kinds of risks to the situation. For there. This is a small town, Marystown. As you can see, there's not much holding this up after the hurricane. So tremendous physical damage, obviously, caused by Hurricane Igor. So we talk about, in project management, we talk about the cost of quality, COQ. And it is stated that the cost of quality has this iceberg syndrome, where we tend to focus on the evident top and we tend to ignore, unfortunately, the hidden element of this iceberg. Well, the same reality exists for risk management, frankly. And with risks as well, there are all kinds of costs that sometimes do not become prevalent until you actually go through the experience and the lessons learned and the retrospectives, so that you can do things better. Some of the severe consequences that we suffered, and I, again, being responsible for some of the information systems, information technology, and information management with the government of Newfoundland, I was directly responsible for some of this, fortunately or unfortunately. The main government website was down for several days. This is at a time when the government of Newfoundland was desperately trying to position itself as a global player in the oil and gas industry. Okay, this tremendously drove away business. For us to have not thought through and not had a plan, it's an almost no-brainer, but for all of us as a collective, as a team, to not have thought about the government website and to have had a disaster recovery site in Singapore or Mesa, Nevada, or elsewhere, that was a significant gap in our thought process. And I'll get to why that some of those things may have occurred. Again, the government's brand image was hurt. As I said, the oil and gas industry players were, concerned after this event that, if you can't even have your website up, you can't have the basic infrastructure available to your citizens, and how you'll be able to support us as a business. The airport, the only airport on the island, the major one, was closed for 5 straight days. That's a tremendous blow to the economy of any city across the world. So the type of things that we learned from this particular experience in retrospective, after the fact, was that we should have had in our team a group of experts who had actually been through hurricanes before. The group that was collected and gathered by the government included folks like myself who, at best, only knew about hurricanes from a theoretical perspective. I'd been through earthquakes and other similar natural disasters, but not through hurricanes specifically. So the lessons were, I didn't have the experience, and my team didn't either, actually, unfortunately. Had we brought in an expert from Florida who'd been through a few Category 4s and Category 5s, we would have easily been able to identify the risks. That's why in the PMI world, when you look at project risk management, the process of identifying risks is absolutely critical. And there are several inputs that go into that journey. In order to identify risks effectively, they want you to reach out to experts of all kinds. They want you to brainstorm. They want you to collectively, as a group, think through individually, think through what the potential risks are for a project, both on the negative as well as the positive side. But again, the damage that was caused by this, lingered on for a while, and then the government of Newfoundland had to, as you know, corrective action and defect repair are so much more expensive. And here, the defect repair that was required to be done to the image and the brand for the government of Newfoundland entailed a lot of money to be put in via marketing funds. Newfoundland Tourism was established, so Newfoundland Tourism went out there and did a lot of heavy marketing through airlines such as Air Canada and Emirates and Qatar Airways and many big airlines out there to try and boost the image for this province, where genuinely good things were happening. There was a lot of potential with the oil and gas industry. So that was an interesting experience where, unfortunately, we learned that we really did not have experts on board who knew what hurricanes genuinely entailed and the damage that they could potentially cause to our proper sustenance of the operations. Moving on, another example that I have experienced here is the Carmageddon in Southern California, where I currently reside. So there is an intersection here in Southern California, which actually is the busiest highway intersection across the United States. Okay, the busiest. I happen to live about 5 miles from it, and what happened is that they had to take this down. They had to take the highway. They had to turn it off, basically, that intersection, in order for some expansion work over a weekend in Los Angeles. And what that caused was, obviously tremendous economic, concerns for these small businesses around the area. But the key thing about this is that it was managed and communicated heavily right up front. Across the state, there was heavy information sharing. In fact, we'll talk about the fact that sometimes you can get into over-communication around risks. So this is the major north-south interstate highway in Southern California, 405. This particular intersection, which was shut down, was where the 101 and the 405 connect. Okay, it's a heavy, heavy thoroughfare, both for commuters as well as for commercial vehicles, right? And it is the busiest and most congested freeway in America. That's where I want you to picture this particular scenario. The view that you're seeing here is from the northern end coming into the south, where you're hitting close to the downtown Los Angeles area. So again, some pictures here to give you a sense of the type of traffic that flows here at all times through this thoroughfare. What ended up happening here is that the section of this was closed in 2011, okay, for this improvement, which again is an expansion of a couple of lanes, in order to communicate this to the citizens across the state. What the state of California did is they started putting up signs across the various highways, all the way as far out as 4 hours away from here. And they, frankly speaking, communicated it so heavily that it was almost a joke. We all kind of knew about it, and the message was that for that weekend you will not and you should not plan on being on the highway, especially around this particular intersection, because this particular intersection will be shut and we will be implementing the last key phase of this expansion. Now, what the contractors had done is that they had practiced this and done a full drill, a full basically proof of concept out in the desert in advance, so they knew the steps. It was a heavily award-driven contract, so it was very performance-driven, right? So they had to get this done properly and get it finished by Sunday night, so that, as you know, the weekend here is Saturday, Sunday. So by Sunday night, they had to get this done so that Monday morning, traffic would be able to flow comfortably. Again, these are some pictures from that last key steps taking place over the weekend to make this happen. A lot of work being planned across a multi-vendor, highly complex scenario within very, very tight deadlines. So, there was a lot of concern around this. People were concerned that this wouldn't work effectively, that there would be bottlenecks across the traffic, that this intersection would not open in time for traffic to flow Monday morning, and there would be this Carmageddon or Carpocalypse, as various news channels and Hollywood was calling it. Again, the police force, the fire emergency services were all called in to come in and assist with this, to manage some of the concerns that the citizens had. So what worked here? This is an example of where things worked very well as a result of effective risk management and proactive risk management up front. The reality was traffic was way lighter than normal across a wide area. Okay? Not only this particular intersection that you're seeing here, this is a picture from that weekend. This is unheard of. This intersection at any point in time, even at 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, doesn't have such light traffic. And you're seeing a picture from that particular weekend where we had absolutely next to no traffic whatsoever. Fewer vehicles used the roads than usual, and this actually affected the entire city, and I'll talk about one of the things that didn't work as well here in a minute here. But the proactive risk management really sent the message across. And interestingly enough, in a city like Los Angeles, where the public transport system is not used at all, it's virtually a failed system, unfortunately, there was actually excessive usage of it. It was the highest ever weekend ridership since its inception. The Metrolink computer train system that we have here had the highest ever ridership recorded. And since then as well, we haven't had as high a ridership. Now, those are the things that worked well. And while communication and over-communication in some ways is actually almost encouraged in the PMI world for those who may be interested in taking the risk management professional certification track through PMI, if you ever take that risk management professional exam, I would say about 15 to 20% of the questions have a communications flavor to it. That is because PMI ties in communication with risk management very closely. It is stated that, if you are communicating risks, if you're keeping people informed, if you are advising people of warning signs and triggers, and you're communicating the risk register and the watch list, then the chances of risks being managed more effectively increase considerably. At the same time, there is a balancing act. Excessive over-communication can drive some paranoia and affect operations significantly. This particular weekend, what happened is over-communication actually scared people to the point that it tremendously affected a lot of the small to medium-sized businesses that were even 30, 40, 50 miles away from this intersection. The citizens of the city decided to just stay home, period. So even though you would be maybe 30, 50 miles away in Santa Barbara or elsewhere in other parts of the city, such as Orange County, there was no traffic, which was affecting small and medium-sized businesses across the entire region. This over-communication, again, ended up having a cost. So while your particular project, that intersection, the 405 and 101 intersection, went very smoothly, there were some other repercussions, unfortunately, that we had not thought through effectively. And there was damage being done to the operations of small businesses. And again, they ended up filing claims and lawsuits and things of that nature against the city state. Okay? So we have to again learn that, there is a balancing act here. Again, it's not a science, it's an art. But where do you draw that line? You want to identify risks, you want to proactively plan risk responses, but at the same time, it has to be done in a balanced and carefully coordinated manner. Okay, another example I'd like to use is Knodemy. I'm an advisor for the startup based out of Northern California. The couple that started this, interestingly enough, grew up in the Arabian Gulf region, and so this organization is headquartered in the Silicon Valley, has a global footprint. They're online tutors, and they do camps and code camps, math camps, all kinds of fun stuff like that for children ages 8 and above. They also give back a lot to the community through their Educate One program. Very interesting business model, and they're doing really well. How do they manage risks? Well, they bring in the best of the Agile world. Again, Agile nowadays is particularly popular, especially in the IT industry. But as a former professor from the British University in Dubai, who's up in France now, I get to deal with him a little bit nowadays, Paul. Paul and I have several conversations about how Agile is now being used not only in the IT space or the software space, but also in non-software industries. And for example, the construction industry, the oil and gas industry is trying to leverage best practices from Agile to manage risk. Knodemy uses a very lean startup methodology of prototyping. Prototyping is an excellent way to manage risks. You make the abstract and ambiguous very real for all your stakeholders. That you present a prototype, a proof of concept, a beta to your constituents. They review it, they see it, they can touch it, they can feel it. They get a sense of what reality is, what's possible and what is not possible. It's also an excellent way to manage expectations. Okay. They reduce a lot of risk by beta testing. They have very proactive feedback loops. And again, who do they use for beta testing? Both internally and externally. They children because Knodemy, again, caters to children ages 8 and above. They also have products for college students, but they're using, you see their testing is being done by a lot of young, energetic folks who are providing brilliant and innovative ideas that, with all due respect, folks like you and me at this age don't think of. So again, they're shortening the time to market product delivery. They're able to do launches using Scrum Ban and techniques of that sort to deliver new features, new bells and whistles along the way in small, quick releases. And they're very adaptive. Their platform, again, and allows changes based on what the market needs and requirements are. So again, Agile principles are an excellent source, in my humble opinion. This is an area that is particularly dear to me, doing some research here with the Schema Business School in France at the moment in the area of Agile. And I really believe that Agile, many of the teachings of Agile are particularly useful for managing risk. The daily stand-up, if you're in the Scrum shop, the daily Scrum is an excellent tool, for example, to manage risks. It doesn't matter what type of project it is. Right? The quick daily connection every morning before your day starts, for 10-15 minutes, your team stands around some sort of task board where you have a list of things that are in play or expected to be done or completed, or even a list of defects that you may be trying to prioritize and work through. You very quickly go around, and everyone answers three very basic questions. Number one, what have we accomplished in the last 24 hours? What do I intend to do in the next 24 hours? And number three, what challenges am I facing? What obstacles am I currently encountering in being able to deliver value at the moment? Okay, I quickly get a sense of reality. As a project manager, as a program director, I get a quick sense of reality as to what is the actual landscape looking like on my project. So daily stand-ups are an excellent way to manage risks. Another one is this idea of reflective learning, or what we call retrospectives, specifically in the Scrum world. Retrospectives are a very forward-thinking, constructive way of looking at and learning from what has happened to very much focus on how we can continuously improve going forward. So we very quickly are able to be nimble and adapt and incorporate lessons learned, best practices, improve our estimates very quickly based on what we've learned so far within the project. Again, these are ideas that are not, as Agile has been labeled for some odd reason just with the software world. Well, these are principles that don't just need to belong in the software world. These are principles that can apply in any type of project virtually out there across the globe. Again, progressive elaboration, another key element of Agile. Well, it's probably true in project management in general. As we work through the project, we progressively become more informed. We go through this cone of uncertainty. So a cone, if you think of an ice cream cone at the top, it's very wide. But as you start getting toward the bottom, it gets narrow and narrow. You become more refined. You know more. Your estimates go from the very wide to the narrow. As you go from that rough order of magnitude to a much more detailed breakdown. Okay. I'm sorry, just one moment here. So, why do we need risk management? Again, those case studies show us that regardless of whether you are dealing with natural disasters or man-made significant capital infrastructure projects, or if you're running a relatively small, leading-edge IT software shop, such as Knodemy, risk management is there and prevalent in your business, and it does directly impact your operations in your business. Just a few quotes here. James Lamb, out of this Wiley Finance textbook, The only alternative to risk management is crisis management, right? And crisis management is so much more expensive. As we know, prevention is cheaper than inspection, right? Preventative actions are so much cheaper than corrective action and defect repair. The studies have shown that, the numbers are staggeringly different. The next one, our Auditor General of Canada, without good risk management practices, government cannot manage its resources effectively. Again, you cannot manage your resources effectively if you do not have good risk management practices, right? So risk management, again, one thing I like about Sheila's quote is that her second bit, which is the risk management means more than preparing for the worst. We're not just concerned about the threats. Look at the next piece that she says. It also means taking advantage of opportunities. So those positive risks, they're the ones that we can enhance and share and accept and exploit from a positive perspective. Risk management also opens doors for opportunities for us. Again, some of the absolute key principles for effectively managing risks is to increase risk awareness, right? Again, without creating paranoia, but at the same time communicating clearly what could the effects or the benefits of our risk management strategy be, right? Again, that failure mode and effect analysis, FMEA. Several of you may be familiar with the FMEA concept. It's something for you to look up if that's, and I can send you more information on the side for those of you who'd like to follow up with me later. What could affect the achievement of objectives? What could change? What could go wrong? What could go right? All of these are the things that we would want to think. Are we able to detect? So in failure mode and effect analysis, for example, we look at our ability to detect. You think of a doctor. If a doctor can detect an illness early, right, the cost of repairing that illness, that damage, that defect, is so much smaller. The chances for this patient to survive are so much higher. Right? That's what Six Sigma teaches us for sure. So that ability to measure severity, occurrence, detection, and to increase that risk awareness through a very active risk register, which should be communicated with the majority of the stakeholders. There are no bushes for us to hide behind. The concept of open communication is becoming prevalent across projects, not just Agile. Again, Agile, of course, promotes this idea of information radiation. You radiate information across, and you have these, open communication channels through task boards and Kanban boards and things of that nature. But this is something that we don't just keep within the Agile space, of course. We increase the understanding of risks and associated sensitivities. So we do things like sensitivity analysis, right, where we understand which particular variable or variables. We try to identify those critical few, those 1, 2, or 3 variables ideally, that we are particularly sensitive to, and that may have a tremendous impact on our project. So we want to particularly manage those carefully. We promote a healthy risk culture. Again, it's healthy. It's not burdensome. It's not cost prohibitive. It is not excessively heavy to significantly impact operations. No. We want to build a culture where people are comfortable to talk about risks without being labeled as paranoid or overly conservative. Right? We want to have an open and transparent culture where we are comfortable raising red flags and issues and warnings to our executives. We want to develop a common and consistent approach to risk across the organization, a methodical approach, templatized approach, in which we are training our project management office members to go out there and evangelize in a positive and constructive manner how to identify risks, how to do the qualitative analysis, and if necessary, the quantitative analysis. And again, we have templates in place, we have tools in place, we bring in expertise to be able to manage these and realize the benefits, to be able to forecast forecast the benefits realization with risk management for our projects and programs. Again, we want to take informed risk taking, and we want to help prioritize. We will never be able to manage all our risks. You would need an infinite pool of resources for that, but we'll prioritize it, right? We'll be very proactive in our approach. We want to improve the outcomes. And one of the things is we as organizations need to focus on outcome, not just output. We're looking for quality, not just quantity of the work that's being done. Same thing with risks. We're not necessarily looking for quantity around our risk management activities. We're looking for the quality, the outcomes of what we're doing. So it all comes down to, simple good management, frankly speaking. Risk management is project management. Risk management is management. Dr. Harold Kersner says that risk management is project management. Project management is risk management. So this enables accountability, transparency, clarity and responsibility, clarity and governance, which is comfortable for all of us, right? And it may even mean survival, such as recovering from hurricanes and earthquakes. Unfortunately, we all just saw the Nepal earthquake that took place and the devastation that that's causing. There are all kinds of projects running there at the moment, right, which are trying to bring the country back to its point where it was prior to this unfortunate incident. Again, we know basic principles. Risk is anything that has a level of uncertainty around it. We don't like variation. We don't like uncertainty. And we try to reduce this element of uncertainty, the unknown, as much as possible within our projects. And for the things that are the unknown unknowns, we put aside some management reserve. Again, we need to have an intelligent, methodical approach for coming up with reserves. Reserve analysis is critical. There isn't one size fits all. It's not a fixed number. It's not always 25% or a particular dollar amount. That wouldn't make sense. You have to go through a methodical study and analysis to really assess what makes sense for your particular projects in your particular organization. So we look at both threats and opportunities, right? We'll look at the hindrances and as well as those things that will help us attain the corporate strategic objectives as a result of our projects. This is a picture of a risk event graph. As we know, at the beginning of a project, the chances of a risk occurring are tremendously high. Something is bound to give in a project of any complex size and of any complexity. Right? So you have to manage your risks very effectively, very actively. As you start working through the project timeline, as a general rule, your number of active risks are going down. And you may, in your organizations, actually be returning some of the contingency reserves that were put aside. So, for example, I had a certain amount of contingency put aside for not, in case I won't be able to procure the cement on time. Now that the cement has arrived and it arrived on time, I can return that contingency amount for that particular activity or task back to senior management so that they can utilize those funds elsewhere. Remember, there's always an opportunity cost. You don't want to hoard on to unnecessary contingency amounts because that could affect the rest of the organization. You have to cater to the mothership at all times. You have to always look at the larger scope of the organization overall, right? That's why we don't like the idea of padding where we're excessively putting aside resources for contingencies and suffering from Parkinson's law and things of that nature. But one of the big dangers with projects, obviously, is as you're getting close to to closure in a project, the cost of risk events is so much more significant. As you can see, the cost of risk is rising almost exponentially in some ways, depending on the particular project type. So at the tail end, you have to be particularly cautious as well, even though your list of active risks may be heading considerably downwards. The impact, the cost of risk towards the tail end can be considerable and significant. So again, that has to be managed. There needs to be a strategic approach to that as well. So we take an integrated approach. Right? Integration management is a critical lesson from the PMI world, and we take a very integrated approach. We look at things from various levels. Right? That's what OPM3 assessments. So folks like myself who do OPM3 assessments, we come in and we look at an organization from various levels. We look at it from an executive level, from mid-management level, all the way down to clerical staff, and we ask some defined questions that PMI advises us to ask. And we look at things from a very integrated, holistic approach. We obviously look at it from a system level, a regional level, organizational level, department level, unit level, and then individual level as well if need be. And then, we do this whole bottom-up recommendation based on what we have learned. But risk management, again, needs to be done across the board holistically at all levels. One key lesson that we have learned is across organizations, it doesn't matter where it is, I will go and my team will see and identify and ask a question as to why are you doing it this way? And the answer is, well, that's the way we've been doing it. That's the way I was trained. That's the way I was told to do it. Just because we've been doing it that way always doesn't mean we will continue to do so in the future. Okay? We must be willing to challenge the status quo, and that should be a norm that our senior executives and management should encourage and inculcate in us, to be willing to challenge the status quo for the benefit of the organization at large. So how do you conquer project risk management effectively? How do you take troubled projects and programs out of the deep waters? How do you prevent the Titanic from sinking? It's really very simple, folks. It's called decomposition. It's something that is taught to us, for those of you who have studied the project management professional content, or even read or browsed through the PMBOK guide from PMI, or even the Prince 2 content, or the MSF, the Microsoft Solutions Framework, or Scrum. They all teach us one thing. We break things down into small components. I frequently give the example of the tallest building in the world that is in Dubai right now. The newest one, of course, is being built in the kingdom. At the end of the day, the way these large projects are built is as a result of effective decomposition. You take small bites, and at the end of the day, guess what? The entire building has been constructed, and it's a world marvel, and you have in front of you the world's tallest building. The same thing applies to project risk management. Okay? You have to take small bites. You prototype things within your organization. You try new risk register strategies, such as the failure mode and effect analysis, for example. You try to do new approaches to root cause analysis. You try to come up with new techniques for effectively running retrospectives. You try new approaches such as launching the daily stand-up. Again, you don't have to do this across the organization as a whole. Start with a small unit, a small department. Start with an executive who is willing to try something new with you. Show the value from what you have done, the value of this proactive risk management. Convert it to dollars. Metrics are critical here. At the end of the day, organizations want to see what benefits are we realizing as a result of this investment that we're making in project risk management. You need to be able to show that, but again, it all starts with taking small bites along the way. Again, invest in training. All kinds of labels here, as you can see, depending on what industry you're in, what background your organizations are in. You want to encourage tried and tested methodologies and frameworks and best practices and guides, the ISO standards, PMI's teachings, ISACA's teachings, leverage the ITIL framework from IIBA, American Society for Quality, you name it. There are bodies out there, and again, these trainings are offered virtually online, in person, in any major city across the world. So, invest in yourselves and in your staff members and your associates so that you can deliver value to your organizations. And, of course, research and study and read books that, again, these are a couple of mine here that talk about areas that promote healthy project risk management. Ali, I was given 40 minutes, and I think I have diligently and methodically managed to stay within that exactly. So I will hand this over to you for questions now.
Oh, well, Well, thank you very much, Dr. Rizvi, for very, very promptly calculating your time. So thank you very much. Folks, we are now open for the question and answers. If you have any questions, you could put it in the question box or you could raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on your console. If you click on it, you should be able to speak with Dr. Hasnain Rizvi also. There's one question in the question box. Let me go straight. We have Mr. Kamran Khan. Is there any role of insurance in risk management?
Absolutely. Very good question. So risk, the insurance industry is probably one of the oldest industries out there in the world. And risk management, one of the ways of dealing with negative risk is to make it someone else's problem. In simple English, you transfer it. Transference is one approach of handling negative risks. And insurance is one vehicle, surety bonds are another vehicle, outsourcing is another vehicle. So for example, I could outsource a particular sub-project component to an expert, and when I outsource, I also put the legal liabilities onto that particular organization for that sub-project's deliverables. And insurance is like that as well, where we are able to transfer some of the risk and make it someone else's problem. Absolutely. So it's a critical part, especially toward the tail end. If you recall, I was showing you this picture here when we are dealing with this risk event graph. Towards the tail end, there's a lot for us to lose, right? And we want to make sure that we are, in fact, very carefully managing that so that the cost of fixing and the cost of recovering at the tail end is so significant. We definitely need to have some significant insurance-related products here supporting us in this particular space. Absolutely. Very good question.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me move. There's a caller who has raised a hand. We have Rami Al-Baini. Rami, could you please introduce yourself? Can you hear us? Rami Al-Baini. Unfortunately, we cannot hear Rami, so let me move back to the question box. So there is another one from Brother Mr. Khurram Siddiqui. The question is, what is Agile management exactly? It's a very short question.
Okay, so Agile project management is a framework. It's a general family of methodologies. So it's not one thing. The first thing we have to be careful about when we mention the term Agile, people think of some folks have this vision of it's one exact defined methodology. It's a family of methodologies, okay, that formally came into existence in the 1990s, kind of, although frankly its roots date back to the 1960s from some of the lean principles. They say, for example, man went to the moon using some of these lean/agile principles. But nonetheless, in 2001, there was this Agile Manifesto. You should look up Agile Manifesto on the internet after this presentation. In 2001, a group of experts in this Agile space got together and decided what some of the, they call it the 4 paired core values, what some of the core principles of Agile would be in the world of project management. And simply put, Agile is a more adaptive, change-driven approach to running projects, as opposed to a more plan-driven approach, which is seen by many as the traditional waterfall, for example, is a perfect example of the traditional approach. Now, one isn't better than the other necessarily, always. Again, one size does not fit all. Agile makes sense in many places, and the traditional waterfall or plan-driven approach makes sense in many other projects and programs. And sometimes a marriage between the two makes sense. Some sort of hybrid between the two also makes sense, where you are running a composite between the plan-driven and the change-driven in the same environment.
Okay, we have
I'd be happy to share more about Agile with you.
We have a supplementary question from Mr. Kilani on Agile. Is the Agile methodology only applied in software development?
No, not at all, actually. I actually just did a presentation on how Agile can be used in the non-software industry. So, for example, I talked about 3D printing, and there's a company out of here, the Southern California, it's being incubated out of the University of Southern California. They've launched a product called Zeus. Zeus is actually about to come into the GCC region. It's launching in Kuwait, and then it's expected to launch in the Emirates and elsewhere as well within the next few months. It's a non-software product. It's a manufactured product being manufactured in Taiwan and being shipped directly across the world. They're using Agile principles. Agile principles entail, again, a number of things like that I covered at a high level real quick, which is, again, that frequent communication, transparency in information where the customer is part of the journey with us. The customer is tied to the hip. So as opposed to the customer being in another room, the customer is with us, tied to the hip with us for the journey. So this requires an investment from the customer as well, as opposed to the customer just giving me a check and saying, okay, go do this, here's the money, you go fix it. No, the customer is actually tied to me along the journey, and they have to make an investment of resources as far as time and energy goes as well. But it's a very nimble, adaptive approach. Here, for example, in Southern California, we live in the Hollywood region, and Hollywood is very agile. Actors, I have a lot of actors who are students of mine, and actors are, very agile in their approach, especially with daytime soap operas and stuff. The advertising agencies, the marketing agencies have a very agile approach to creating new marketing material, new, exciting collateral, things of that nature. Those are some examples that come to mind immediately.
Okay, we have another one from Mr. Anil Dakar. The question is, how do you rate risk transfer as an effective risk management methodology? My concern is, even though we transfer the risk to someone else, it still remains to the project.
It's a very good question. That's a billion-dollar question, actually. It's a very interesting comment you make, because I think of Boeing. One of the bigger things from there, you say it still remains within the project. That is true, and we need to appreciate and realize that. In fact, specifically, we need to realize that our brand and image is still tied to it. So, for example, I think of Boeing. I do a lot of training at Boeing here in the U.S., and they're a client of ours, and a strategic mistake that they made was when the Dreamliner was launched. If you recall, they launched the Dreamliner aircraft about 2-3 years ago. And when that happened, you may recall their batteries were catching on fire. So there was an Ethiopian Airlines that caught on fire, and some other airlines where the battery caught on fire, unfortunately. Fortunately, there was no human loss. What the strategic mistake that Boeing made is that their spokesperson went to the press and said that, well, this is not our fault. This was a battery built by some company in, I don't recall if it was Korea or South or Taiwan. But anyway, they said that it was their mistake, and so it's not our mistake. Well, there was a huge outcry, right? I mean, in the press and everywhere else, saying, well, are you kidding me? This is a $300-400-500 million machine, and you're not taking responsibility for the battery. We don't care whether the battery was built by A, B, or C. As far as we're concerned, we see the Boeing label, and we're letting our children and families and relatives fly on these airlines. So ultimately, you do have to take responsibility. Of course, your brand and image is tied to it, and an external failure of that nature, had there, God forbid, been a significant accident as a result of that battery, of course, people would have picked on, the Boeing label. A few years prior to that, there was this Firestone incident with Firestone tires in North America. Again, the Firestone label is what people remember. It's even called the Firestone incident. But actually, the mistake was of the dealerships. I don't want to get, it's a long story I could share with you separately via email, but you could look it up. The actual source of the problem was the dealerships were making the mistake. They were putting the wrong size tires on the cars. And Firestone was telling them not to do that. But ultimately, as far as the press goes, as far as the public perception is that the Firestone tires failed. So at the end of the day, you have to manage that communication in your brand very carefully. So I totally agree with you. That, you see, to answer your question, I'm taking you to a scenic route, but I say all this to emphasize the point that a single strategy approach will not work. For example, if you think of IT systems, one single approach to manage your systems is not going to work. To just have, for example, end users only report problems to the help desk, that's not going to work. You also need to have detection tools. You also need to have tools that are, detecting issues at the application layer and the ERP layer and the security layer. So with risk management, you need a multi-pronged approach as well. Assurance is one pill. It's not the entire cure. Okay? Very good question. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have another one from Brother Haytham Ibrahim. The question is, can you please give example for some preventive measures used to avoid natural risks?
Well, you would have to have a connection with our creator there. So I don't know how we can do that would be the first thing. But jokes aside, I mean, the reality is whether the former Vice President of the United States, Mr. Al Gore, whether he is correct or not, many of you would have seen his an Inconvenient Truth presentation. I've had occasion to meet him and see that a few times. The reality is that natural disasters, as far as scientists can tell, and the data seems to indicate, is that it is only increasing. Just yesterday, for example, in the United States, they said out of the 400 million citizens in the U.S., 33 million yesterday, just the one day. This was a news headline. Out of the 400 million citizens, 33 million yesterday were in danger of some natural disaster yesterday. Tornadoes and various things were going on across the country. So that's almost 8 to 10% of the citizenship of this, leading superpower in the world. Okay, the key thing there is to be aware. I've been through earthquakes. I mean, I'm not proud of it, but God has His ways of making things happen. I've been through earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes. Again, the key thing is that you need to be proactively prepared for it. With earthquakes, for example, here in Southern California, people who've been through it, as long as they're prepared, as long as families know how to deal with it, as long as businesses have a strategy for how to manage it, your impact can be managed. Natural disasters are here to stay. We are not at the moment ready to move to another planet. Mother Nature, is doing its work, and we need to coexist with this earth. So along with, of course, being socially responsible, we need to have specific strategic approaches. We need to have a strategy for how we're going to do it. And again, you bring in experts, people who have been through disasters who can guide you through these processes.
Okay, that really brings us towards
the next question, Ali.
Well, that really brings us toward the end of the webinar, Dr. Rizvi. Any concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss that?
Well, I just want to thank everyone. Again, I wanted to thank the Madinah Institute for giving me this opportunity. I look forward to future conversations as well. And again, as I said, it's a topic that is of great interest to me. Anyone who is interested in learning more about this is welcome to touch base with me. My contact information is right here. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to assist in any capacity that I can. And those of you who are in the United Arab Emirates, as I said, I'll be there for the IBX Awards the week of May 19th, 18th timeframe. So if need be, I'm happy to meet with you as well. Again, Ali, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I really want to thank you on behalf of Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship and PMI AGC for taking time to share this valuable information with all of us. So thank you very much, Dr. Hasnain Rizvi. And thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We really appreciate your time and the questions that you've asked to make it an interactive experience for all of us. You are entitled to claim 2 PDUs for this webinar from PMI AGC. So all of those who have successfully attended this webinar, you shall receive an email from my community within the next 24 hours giving you the instructions how to claim the PDU from the PMI AGC. So please stay tuned to MILE for our upcoming webinars, which you can tune in at webinar.mile.org. We are recording this webinar. The presentation can be downloaded from the MILE community, and equally you shall be able to watch the recorded version in the next couple of days from MILE community. Thank you very much. You all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Assalamu alaikum.
Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.